August 12, 1988. 2:15 p.m. Elstree Studios, London. Harrison Ford walked into Steven Spielberg's cluttered office holding a script that would either save or destroy the Indiana Jones franchise. His face was stone cold, his jaw set with the kind of determination that had made him famous. But this wasn't about playing a hero on screen. This was about preventing the destruction of a character he loved, even if it meant going to war with the man who had made him a star. "Steven," Harrison said, placing the Temple of Doom sequel script on Spielberg's desk with deliberate force. "We need to talk, and you're not going to like what I have to say." Steven Spielberg looked up from the storyboards he was reviewing. At 41, Spielberg was at the absolute peak of his creative powers. E.T., Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones, and the Temple of Doom, he could do no wrong. The Last Crusade was going to be the biggest adventure film ever made, with a budget that would make studio executives nervous and expectations that would crush ordinary directors. Everything was going according to plan. Everything except Harrison Ford. "What's the problem, Harrison?" Spielberg asked, not looking up from his drawings. "The script is locked. We start filming in 6 weeks. Harrison Ford sat down across from Spielberg and leaned forward. What he said next would shatter a friendship and nearly end a franchise. "The problem, Steven, is that you're about to destroy Indiana Jones, and if you go ahead with this script, you'll be killing the character we both love." The silence that followed was deafening. Spielberg slowly put down his pencil and looked at Harrison Ford like he had just suggested burning down the sets. But Harrison wasn't finished. He was just getting started. "The script," Harrison continued, tapping the pages with his finger, "turns Indiana Jones into a cartoon character. You've forgotten what made Raiders special. You've forgotten what made the character work. And if we make this movie as written, it'll be the last Indiana Jones film anyone wants to see." To understand why Harrison Ford was willing to risk his career by challenging Steven Spielberg, you need to understand what had happened to the Indiana Jones franchise between 1981 and 1988. Raiders of the Lost Ark had been lightning in a bottle, a perfect adventure film that captured the spirit of 1930s serials while delivering modern thrills. But Temple of Doom had been different. Darker, more violent, more focused on spectacle than character. Harrison had watched audiences' reactions to Temple of Doom carefully. Critics complained it was too dark. Parents worried about taking their children. The magic of Raiders hadn't been recaptured. It had been replaced with something harder, meaner, less joyful. And now, looking at the script for what would become Last Crusade, Harrison saw the same mistakes being repeated, only worse. "Steven," Harrison said, his voice rising slightly, "do you remember what you told me when we made Raiders? You said Indiana Jones was a real person who happened to have extraordinary adventures. You said the key was keeping him human, keeping him vulnerable. Look at this script. He's Superman with a whip. He's invincible. He doesn't get hurt. He doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't need anyone's help. Where's the humanity?" Spielberg's first reaction was defensive anger. "Harrison, you're an actor, not a director. You don't see the big picture. This script gives Indiana Jones his greatest adventure yet. The stunts are bigger. The action is more intense. The stakes are higher than ever before. And that's exactly the problem." Harrison shot back. "Bigger isn't better, Steven. More isn't better." Raiders worked because it was about character first, action second. This script is all action, no character. It's everything wrong with Hollywood sequels rolled into one movie. The confrontation was about more than just a script. It was about the fundamental nature of heroism, about what made Indiana Jones special, and about whether friendship could survive creative differences. But most of all, it was about Harrison Ford refusing to let a character he loved be turned into something he couldn't respect. "Give me one example," Spielberg challenged. "Show me one scene in this script that's so terrible it would destroy Indiana Jones." Harrison flipped through the script until he found what he was looking for. "This scene," he said, pointing to a page in the middle of the second act. "Indiana Jones is hanging from a helicopter, being shot at by 12 different bad guys, and not only does he not get hit, he manages to swing into the helicopter and take out all the villains while cracking jokes. Steven, that's not Indiana Jones. That's a superhero. That's Superman with a fedora." Spielberg leaned back in his chair, studying Harrison's face. What do you want me to do, Harrison? Make him weak? Make him fail? I want you to make him human, Harrison replied. I want him to get hurt. I want him to make mistakes. I want him to need help from other people. I want the audience to worry about him, not just sit back and watch him be invincible. The argument that followed would last nearly 2 hours and would be remembered by everyone who witnessed it as one of the most intense creative battles in Hollywood history. Spielberg accused Harrison of not understanding the demands of blockbuster filmmaking. Harrison accused Spielberg of losing touch with what made movies emotionally satisfying. You're thinking like a studio executive, Harrison said at one point. Bigger explosions, more stunts, higher body count. But you're not thinking like Steven Spielberg, the director who made Raiders of the Lost Ark. The accusation stung because there was truth to it. Spielberg had felt pressure from Paramount to make Last Crusade bigger and more spectacular than Temple of Doom. The studio wanted a guaranteed blockbuster, not a character study. And somewhere in the process of trying to satisfy those demands, Spielberg had lost sight of what made Indiana Jones special. But Spielberg wasn't ready to admit that. Not yet. Harrison, Spielberg said, his voice tight with frustration, I've made more successful movies than almost any director in history. I know what audiences want. They want spectacle. They want excitement. They want to see Indiana Jones do things they've never seen him do before. No, Steven, Harrison replied, shaking his head. They want to care about Indiana Jones. They want to root for him. They want to worry about him. All the spectacle in the world won't matter if the audience doesn't connect with the character emotionally. That's when Harrison Ford played his trump card, a threat that he never thought he would have to make. Steven, I've been thinking about this for weeks. If we make this movie as written, it'll be my last Indiana Jones film. I won't be part of turning a character I love into a joke. The silence that followed was unlike anything either man had experienced. Spielberg stared at Harrison, trying to determine if he was bluffing. Harrison stared back, his expression making it clear that he was absolutely serious. You're really prepared to walk away? Spielberg asked quietly. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to protect Indiana Jones from this script, Harrison replied. Even if it means walking away from the biggest franchise in Hollywood. The threat was real. And both men knew it. Harrison Ford didn't need Indiana Jones anymore. He was a movie star who could get any role he wanted. But Indiana Jones without Harrison Ford wouldn't be Indiana Jones at all. It would be a costume worn by someone else, trying to recapture magic that had already been lost. Spielberg stood up and walked to the window of his office, looking out at the sound stages where Raiders of the Lost Ark had been filmed 7 years earlier. For a long moment, he didn't speak. When he finally turned around, his expression was different. Sadder, more thoughtful. Harrison, he said quietly. What if you're right? What if I have lost sight of what made Indiana Jones special? What if this script really would destroy the character? It was the first crack in Spielberg's certainty, and Harrison recognized it immediately. Steven, I'm not trying to attack you. I'm trying to save something we both created and both love, but I can't do it alone. I need the Steven Spielberg who directed Raiders, not the one who's trying to satisfy studio executives. What happened next would determine not just the fate of Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, but the future of their friendship and their creative partnership. Spielberg sat back down at his desk and looked at the script as if seeing it for the first time. Show me, Spielberg said. Go through the script page by page and show me what you think is wrong. But more importantly, show me how you think we can fix it. For the next hour, Harrison Ford became a collaborator instead of an adversary. He walked Spielberg through the script, pointing out moments where Indiana Jones felt like a superhero instead of a human being. More importantly, he suggested alternatives that would preserve the excitement while restoring the character's vulnerability. This chase scene, Harrison said, pointing to a sequence in the first act. Instead of having Indy perfectly execute every move, what if he makes a mistake early on? What if he misjudges a jump and barely catches himself? Suddenly, the audience is worried about him instead of just watching him be amazing. And this scene with the bad guys, Harrison continued, flipping to another page. Instead of having Indy outwit them through superior planning, what if he gets caught? What if he has to rely on luck and improvisation to escape? It makes him more relatable, and the escape more satisfying. Spielberg found himself nodding as Harrison talked. Each suggestion was small on its own, but together they added up to a fundamental shift in how Indiana Jones was portrayed. Instead of a flawless action hero, he became a flawed human being who succeeded through courage, determination, and a little bit of luck. You know what the real problem is? Spielberg said suddenly. I've been trying to top Temple of Doom instead of trying to recapture Raiders. I've been thinking about escalation instead of emotional truth. Harrison leaned back in his chair, sensing that the battle was won. Steven, Raiders worked because it felt real. The stunts were incredible, but they felt like things that could actually happen to a real person. Indy got hurt. He made mistakes. He needed help. That's what made the audience care about him. And that's what this script is missing, Spielberg admitted. The humanity. The conversation that followed would reshape Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade from the ground up, but it would also do something even more important. It would save the friendship between Harrison Ford and Steven Spielberg. Instead of destroying their creative partnership, their fight would make it stronger. But the real test came the next day, when Spielberg had to tell Paramount executives that the script they had approved needed to be completely rewritten. The studio wasn't happy about the delays or the additional costs, but Spielberg stood firm, backed by Harrison's threat to walk away if changes weren't made. We can make a big, loud, expensive Indiana Jones movie, Spielberg told the executives, or we can make a good Indiana Jones movie. But if we try to make both, we'll end up with neither. The rewrite process took 3 months. Harrison was involved in every step, working closely with Spielberg and screenwriter Jeffrey Boehm to restore the balance between character and spectacle that had made Raiders so special. Sean Connery's casting as Indy's father helped immensely, giving the story an emotional core that the original script had lacked. When Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade was finally released in 1989, it became the highest-grossing film of the year and earned universal critical acclaim. More importantly, it restored faith in the Indiana Jones franchise and proved that Harrison Ford's instincts about the character had been correct. Harrison saved Indiana Jones, Spielberg said years later. He was willing to risk our friendship and his career to protect a character he loved. That kind of artistic courage is rare in Hollywood. I'm grateful he had it. For Harrison, the fight with Spielberg was about more than just one script or one movie. It was about the responsibility that comes with creating something that means so much to so many people. Indiana Jones belongs to everyone who loves him, Harrison reflected in a 2008 interview. Steven and I were just the caretakers. We had a responsibility to protect him from being turned into something cheap or cynical. Sometimes being a caretaker means having difficult conversations, even with people you love and respect. The relationship between Harrison Ford and Steven Spielberg was forever changed by their fight over Last Crusade, but not in the way either man expected. Instead of driving them apart, their willingness to have a difficult conversation about something they both cared about made their creative partnership stronger and more honest. When they worked together again on Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, nearly 20 years later, they approached the project with a level of creative collaboration and mutual respect that might not have existed without the battle they fought in that London office. Steven learned to trust my instincts about Indiana Jones, Harrison said, and I learned to trust his vision as a filmmaker. That fight taught us both that creative conflict can be productive if it comes from a place of love for the work. Today, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is considered by many fans to be the best sequel in the franchise, a worthy follow-up to Raiders of the Lost Ark that captured the spirit of the original while telling its own compelling story. The father-son relationship between Indiana and Professor Jones gave the film an emotional weight that balanced perfectly with its spectacular action sequences. In Hollywood, where ego and money often matter more than artistic integrity, the fight between Harrison Ford and Steven Spielberg stands as a reminder that sometimes you have to risk everything to save what you love.